Hi and welcome to another tutorial. In today's lesson we'll learn all about system flowcharts and how to draw one correctly. So anyways guys, let's jump in. So the first thing is, what is a system flowchart? Basically, a system flowchart visually represents the flow of data, processes, and decision points within a system, illustrating how it operates, transforms inputs into outputs, and how its components interact. So basically, how it works, how does it go from input to output, and how everything interacts. There are a few flowchart symbols that you will need to know. We're not going to look at all of them, we're only going to select 9 of them, but basically symbols are used to represent different elements of a process or system. Each symbol has a different meaning, allowing the flowchart to visually communicate the structure and flow of a system effectively. Annotate, it is very important to actually write something in these symbols, and to draw this we're going to use online charting software like Lucidchart or draw.io. So let's have a look at the symbols. The first symbol is the paper document. So the paper document symbol in a flowchart represents a physical or printed document involved in a process. The simplest example of this is an invoice or a receipt. The next process is the process, and basically a process is an action that is performed within the system or a process, and it could be something like a calculation. Direct access storage. So basically this represents data that is stored in a format that allows for immediate retrieval, and our most common examples of this would be a database somewhere or a disk storage system. Manual operation. Manual operation represents a process or task that is performed manually rather than automated, and an example is when a human actually needs to perform an action. Online display. Online display represents information displayed on a screen, and an example for this is just viewing something on a monitor or a digital device. Telecommunications link. This is basically the transmission of data between systems or locations. Our biggest example of this would be the internet, or if you're on a local area network, something like that. Online input. This is where data is entered through an online interface and it goes into the system. An example of this would be an online form using a keyboard, touchscreen, or other input device. Tape. So this symbol represents magnetic tape. So it's all about data storage on a magnetic tape. An example of this would be for long-term storage that you don't need at your fingertips. You can put that onto magnetic tape. Cloud. So the cloud symbol represents data or services stored or accessed via cloud computing. Our biggest example of this would be an online storage location or server, for example, Google Drive. So let's now have a look at an example. So this is a bookstore, an online bookstore. So an online bookstore sales information system allows customers to search for books by entering the author's names. A list of books written by the author is then displayed. To purchase books, the customer would need to only indicate the desired books, and then an amount payable will be displayed for the customer to pay by credit card. The credit card details are validated with the relevant financial institution, and an email is generated to the customer, and a transaction record is written to the sales transaction file. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack in here, but basically if we have a look at some of these words, if you want to do a search, you will then need to have some kind of online input where you're putting in the author's names. Amount payable, you need to calculate the total cost, which is going to be a process. Same with paying by credit card, that already sounds like a process. When you need to communicate with the financial institution electronically, you definitely need to have some kind of telecommunications link, and then the data is written to the sales transaction file. So that sounds like it's already going to be another database or even magnetic tape used for backup. So now let's go into Lucidchart and actually draw this up. Cool, so now we're in Lucidchart, and the first thing that I did is I just put all the system flowchart symbols in one custom location, just so it's easier to use. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to knock off this search function. And the search function is quite easy. It's just going to be an online import. So the online import, this is where we search for our products. In this case, it's the books. And what do we search for? We search for the author's name. So once we have that, the next thing that we will need to do is we would need to have a process, which would be to calculate the total cost. So if we have another process here, so if we go calculate total cost, now we can actually get stuff from other places. So the main place where we're going to get this information from is going to be the database here, and the database will contain all the prices of all of the books. It then says that the amount payable will be displayed for the customer to pay by credit card. So we would need to have an online display, and this will be the total cost on this side. So if we have total cost over there, cool. So now we need some arrows. So this will drop down into this process over here, and I need to just make sure that the arrow is going down. The database into that process over there is going to be a two-way communication, because you can send data into the database and data will come out of the database. And this will display the information to the customer. So it's only going to be one way, and it's going to be that way. So once we have that, the next process that we need is to actually process or to do that transaction. So if we have another process for payment, we obviously need to have the total cost, which is coming down, but we also need to make sure that we can import our details. So we need another online import over here, and this will be our details. So we can have our credit card detail, customer details, etc. And that will go into that payment process. And then it says the credit card details are validated with the relevant financial institutions electronically, and an email is generated for the customer, and a transaction record is written to the sales transaction file. So now what will happen is we need to have some kind of communications link, and this will now link up with our financial institution. So now once we have the financial institution there, it also says an email is generated for the customer. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put another communications link over here, and this is going to be the email to the customer. And then finally it says the transaction record is written to a sales transaction file. So there's a few ways that we can actually do this, but if we're just gonna use our tape storage over here, and if we call this our transaction file, and once we have our transaction file in there, then all we need to do is just link it up from that payment process. Now this could also be a cloud transaction file if you want, so totally up to you, but I'm gonna leave it at that. So anyways guys, that's how you do a system flowchart for an online bookstore according to this scenario. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.